What's up guys? Golden Knight here. Do you know when opening your drawing program, picking up your sketchbook, or even looking for references feels too exhausting, almost painful? If you're an artist, this has probably happened to you, even if you've never put that feeling into words. That's creative burnout, a silent exhaustion that drains your mind, your motivation, and the joy of creating. And the worst part is, many people mistake it for laziness or weakness. It's not. Artistic burnout is born from excessive pressure, constant comparison, unrealistic expectations, and the toxic idea that artists need to be producing all the time. But the good news is, there is a way out. There's a real, healthy path to recovering the joy of creating without hurting yourself in the process. In this video, I'm going to show you 10 real and tested ways to overcome artistic burnout. By the way, this video is not meant to replace therapy with a specialized professional, okay? All the information here is based on the experiences of ordinary artists. My goal is simply to help you identify a problem you might be going through and seek help. That said, let's move on to the first topic. By the way, I have to say, I've been taking the art school for digital artists by Burnout, and honestly, I've never learned so much in such a short time. It's a super complete course, like a condensed art school, focused only on what really matters. Perspective, anatomy, composition, all explained really well. If you want to level up fast, this is the way. Check the first link in the description. Totally worth it. Accept that you're burned out. This is by far the hardest step, and the most ignored. Most artists go into autopilot denial mode. We convince ourselves it's just a bad phase, a temporary block, an unproductive week. It'll get better, I'm just uninspired, if I push harder, it'll pass. But burnout doesn't work like that. It doesn't disappear when ignored. On the contrary, it grows in silence, feeds on guilt, and deepens every time you push past your limit. Accepting that you're burned out isn't giving up on art. It's stopping the fight against your own body and mind. It's recognizing that something has gotten out of control. When you admit, I'm tired, this is too much for me, you're not losing strength, you're regaining control. Another important point, burnout doesn't mean you've lost your creativity or love for art. It just means you've demanded too much of yourself, for too long, without enough rest. The flame isn't out. It's just smothered under layers of exhaustion. And the first step to reigniting it is to stop pretending everything's fine. Breathe. Take a step back. Look at yourself with the same empathy you'd have for a fellow artist going through the same thing. Take a real break. Here lies one of the most common and most self-sabotaging mistakes when it comes to artistic burnout. Everyone says, take a break, but hardly anyone explains what that really means. Because in practice, most artists stop drawing, but don't stop pressuring themselves. They leave the tablet and go straight to Instagram, Pinterest, ArtStation. Still consuming art, comparing styles, watching people create non-stop. That's not rest. That's emotional labor without the output. A real break is when art leaves the center of your attention for a while. Completely. It's when you let your brain rest from performance, from constant evaluation, from the feeling of always being behind. Even passive comparison consumes mental energy. And energy is exactly what's lacking in burnout. Here's the hard part. At first, the emptiness is uncomfortable. You might feel unproductive, useless, even guilty. It feels like you're wasting time or falling behind. But that's just your productivity addiction talking. The creative brain needs idleness, boredom, silence. That's the space where ideas begin to reorganize themselves, without pressure. Use this time to live as a person, not as an artist. Walk without headphones. Cook something from scratch. Play a game just for fun. Read a book. Live without the obligation to turn everything into a reference. And something curious happens after a few days, sometimes weeks. Little urges start popping up out of nowhere. A random idea. A mental image. A silly curiosity. That's the sign your mind is recovering. Rediscover your why. Every artist starts for a reason. No one wakes up one day and decides to draw out of obligation. In the beginning, there's curiosity, wonder, fun. There's that moment when creating makes time disappear. But over the years, that original reason gets buried under layers of pressure, goals, numbers, comparisons, and external expectations. When you no longer remember why you started, art becomes a burden. And that's where burnout takes root. Rediscovering your why isn't abstract or overly philosophical. It's a simple but powerful exercise. Ask yourself, honestly, what made me fall in love with this? Don't think about what brings recognition, what works with the algorithm, or what people praise. Try to remember what made you want to draw. Maybe it was a specific character, an anime that moved you, a game, a comic, a movie scene. Maybe it was just the feeling of creating something from scratch, giving shape to an idea that only existed in your mind. When was the first time you felt proud of a drawing? What made you lose track of time? These answers reconnect you with the root of your creativity. When the why resurfaces, art stops being just work and becomes expression again. You no longer create just to meet expectations, but to communicate with yourself. Change tools or techniques. Sometimes, burnout doesn't come from a lack of love for art, but from too much repetition. You've been doing the same thing, the same way, for so long that your brain goes on autopilot. The issue isn't what you draw, it's how you're drawing. The creative mind needs novelty the same way a muscle needs variation to stay strong. Changing your tool or technique isn't about abandoning your style or starting over. It's about giving your brain a new stimulus, something to break the pattern. If you work only digitally, try something physical: pencil, pen, watercolor, charcoal. Feel the texture of the paper, the permanence of mistakes. And if you only draw portraits, try environments. If you only create serious characters, invent something silly, exaggerated, even childish. The point is to free yourself from the obligation to be good. This step isn't about quality, it's about curiosity and exploration. Switch your main brush, use a weird color palette, draw with your non-dominant hand, limit yourself to 5-minute sketches. All of it lifts the pressure of performance and brings back the fun of experimentation. There's a neurological reason this works. Novelty activates areas of the brain linked to attention and motivation. You start feeling like a beginner again. And the beginner mindset is light. It accepts mistakes, welcomes attempts, embraces imperfection, exactly the opposite of burnout, which thrives on constant pressure to get it right. Many artists discover new directions in these, just for fun moments. Sometimes you find a technique you never imagined using. Sometimes, the joy of play alone is enough to break the cycle of exhaustion. Stop chasing perfection. Perfection seems like a good thing, but in practice, it's one of the biggest sources of creative suffering. In this mode, every drawing needs to justify your worth as an artist. And that's exhausting. Perfectionism doesn't come from love for art, it comes from fear. Fear of failing, of being judged, of not being enough. Over time, creating stops being pleasurable and becomes anxiety-inducing. Think about how you drew in the beginning, when you were much younger. You didn't care if it was right, if someone would like it, if it was good enough to post online. You just drew. Made mistakes, laughed, tried again. That mental state is incredibly fertile. Perfectionism kills exactly that, spontaneity. It convinces you that it's only worth creating if it's flawless. Allowing yourself to make mistakes is an act of courage. Make ugly drawings on purpose, clumsy sketches, incomplete ideas. Create with no intention of showing anyone. This isn't regression, it's reclaiming the safe space where creativity grows. Every great piece starts with a lot of bad ones no one ever sees. Surround yourself with people who understand what you're going through. Artistic burnout is deeply isolating. On the outside, it looks like everyone else is producing, evolving, posting, while you can barely open your sketchbook. That internal isolation is dangerous. It makes you believe the problem is only yours. That you failed. That you're not strong enough. But when you start listening to other artists, the narrative completely shifts. Talking to people who face the same struggles brings immediate relief. It definitely doesn't solve everything, but it normalizes what you're feeling. Finding out that amazing artists also freeze, get tired, and think about quitting breaks the illusion of constant productivity. And that alone takes a huge weight off your shoulders. Sometimes, just being able to say, "I'm exhausted," without being judged is therapeutic. But here's an important warning: not every artistic space is healthy. Some communities thrive on competition disguised as motivation, constant comparison, inflated egos, subtle pressure. That only worsens burnout. The ideal is to find communities built on exchange, support, and respect for individual pace. People who genuinely celebrate others' progress, even the small wins. People who understand that rest is also part of the process. Having someone who reminds you to pause, breathe, and not be so hard on yourself is worth more than any technical advice. Emotional support is creative fuel. Rebuild your routine gently. After resting, reflecting, and reconnecting, that urge to get back into it usually shows up. And that's exactly when many artists slip. The most common mistake is trying to make up for lost time with intense effort. Promises like, now I'll take it seriously, I'll draw every day for hours, I can't slip again. This mindset is basically an invitation for burnout to come back even stronger. Routine is not about intensity, it's about sustainable consistency. A gentle routine starts small. Really small. Something you can stick to even on bad days. 20 minutes of loose sketching. One drawing without pressure. A simple study. When the goal is manageable, your brain doesn't go into defense mode. You don't feel that heavy resistance before starting, and that's crucial. Art needs to fit into your life, not overwhelm it. Another important point, respect your body. Sounds obvious, but many artists ignore basic signs of physical exhaustion. They sit for hours, forget to drink water, skip meals, sleep poorly. A tired body leads to a blocked mind. Breaks are not interruptions in the creative process, they are part of it. Stand up, stretch, take a walk, change environments. All of this helps keep your energy flowing. It's also worth rethinking your schedule. Some people create best at night, others in the morning. Forcing a rhythm that doesn't match you creates unnecessary friction. Observe when your mind is most active and use that to your advantage. Find inspiration outside of art. One of the biggest mistakes artists in burnout make is thinking that creativity only feeds on more art. So you fall into an endless consumption cycle. References, portfolios, videos, speed paints, comparisons. And sooner or later, that leads to exhaustion. Because inspiration doesn't come only from images, it comes from experience. Looking outside the art bubble is like opening a window in a room that's been closed for days. The air changes. Walk through the streets with no specific goal, observe people, notice gestures, colors, rhythms. Watch the light hit a building, the reflection in a puddle, the color blend in a cup of coffee. All of that feeds your creative eye in a much deeper way than scrolling through a feed. Great artists have always looked to real life for inspiration. Emotions, stories, memories, sensations. The more you live, the more raw material you have to transform into art. Sometimes the problem is too much screen time and not enough world. Redefine success and expectations. Many artists burn out not because they draw too much, but because they expect too much from themselves, from their results, from recognition. Without realizing it, they start measuring the value of their art through numbers, followers, likes, comments, reach. And when the numbers don't match the effort, frustration hits. And when that frustration becomes routine, the joy dies. The problem is that algorithms change, platforms crash, trends fade. If your motivation depends on those things, it'll always be unstable. One day you feel amazing, the next, invisible. That emotional roller coaster is the perfect ground for burnout. Because you never truly rest. You're always trying to prove something. Redefining success is an act of freedom. Success can be finishing a project you love, even if no one sees it. It can be improving in a specific technical area. It can be feeling more honest with what you create. When the definition of success becomes internal, external pressure loses power. That doesn't mean ignoring professional goals or living in a bubble. It means refusing to let numbers define your worth. The most important art you'll ever make is the one that truly represents you, even if it never goes viral. Celebrate small victories. This last point may seem simple, almost silly. But for many, it's the most transformative of all. Because burnout teaches your brain to associate art with pain, pressure, and frustration. And if you don't change that association, every attempt to create again will carry that weight. Celebrating small victories is like reprogramming that internal system. When you spend days, weeks, or months without being able to create, any step counts. Opening your sketchbook, making a doodle, thinking of an idea and jotting it down. That's not nothing. That's you taking back control. But most artists ignore those moments. They only validate big results, the finished piece. And because of that, the brain never gets rewarded. Only pressure. Every small action needs to be consciously acknowledged. Finished a simple sketch? Celebrate it. Felt like drawing again after a long time? That's incredible. When you celebrate, even silently, your brain learns that creating brings pleasure, not threat. And that's what keeps consistency going in the long run. It's not about settling. It's about building a healthy cycle. Small effort, small reward, desire to keep going. That cycle builds confidence. And confidence is the soil where creativity grows. Overcoming artistic burnout is not about finding a magic fix or becoming who you used to be. It's about learning to create in a more sustainable way. If this path made sense to you, remember, you're not alone in this. Take care of yourself. Respect your rhythm. If this video helped you in any way, don't forget to leave a like, subscribe to the channel, and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss the next ones. Thanks so much for watching all the way through. Don't forget to take a look at the description. There are several important links there that can help you even more. See you in the next video.